Welcome to another healing conversation brought to you by AcousticHealth.com. I'm Lorraine Gailey, and today we're going to talk about how we can connect with our higher self, our guides, angels, and masters. My guest is author Jean Slater of Hiring the Heavens. Jean, thank you for being here on Healing Conversations.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is a magical book, Hiring the Heavens. It is the key to tapping into synchronicity and really working with beings on higher realms to manifest in our life. How did you come up with the idea of Hiring the Heavens?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I must say I'm the last person that would have ever written a book on Hiring the Heavens or any type of spiritual book, because that was not something in my background. I grew up in a church where I would call it a cult, okay? And so I left that church when I was 19 and swore off anything to do with religion, swore off anything to do with spirituality. God, I didn't even say the word. And so years later, I write a book called Hiring the Heavens. And so it is an interesting story how it ended up happening. But it was rather brought to my attention in a way that there was no denying it, that there is actually another dimension that we can tap into. And once I found that out, my whole life changed. Things that we all talk about manifesting, and this became the key for manifesting for me. And it helped me to realize that this dimension that we have always kept at arm's length, that God is somewhere up on the, up in the clouds and away from us, and it brought it down to earth in our everyday lives to work for us, and to help us get our bills paid, and to help us have better relationships, and to help us have a better career. Any aspect of human life that we have can be assisted by the power of the heavens.
Well, it's fascinating that you say it can help us with our finances, it can help us pay our bills. There's actual stories of people who've used this process from the book, and shared this story. Someone actually was able to achieve his financial goals.
Yeah, he hired an entire celestial team to help him with retirement. And he had not been into investing prior and decided what the heck, I'll try this with the power of the heavens. He imagined hiring a spiritual financial consultant to work with him and a spiritual investor to advise him on the best investments to make. And within 3 years, he was able to retire and everything was covered. And I myself also have a spiritual investment team. And do you remember right around 2007 going into 2008 when the market crashed, I got a message from my committee, my spiritual committee, get out of the IRA account that I was in and move it over into something that was guaranteed. And I did that just before the market crashed. And
wow.
Instead of losing money, I earned money during that time. So I know personally the investment angels work.
You talked about a celestial team. This is interesting. How do we build and develop our own team?
The key is to think of this spiritual realm as very similar to what we have here on the physical plane. Mm-hmm. And to imagine that there's every ability, every talent, every skill, every personality trait that exists on this physical plane also exists in the spiritual world. And my belief is that it couldn't exist on the physical plane unless it was in the spiritual world first. And so imagine that those skills and talents and abilities exist. And then the next time you're doing something here on the physical plane, hire away from the spiritual realm first. And think heavens first is what I say. Think heavens first. Hire away from this most expansive resource pool in the universe. And then watch amazing things begin to happen. Synchronicities and orchestrations that without a doubt, were the result of tapping into this tremendous force. It happened for me, Lorraine, when writing my book. this is what happened. I got the message I needed to take the concepts that had just accidentally come to me, to take these concepts and write them in a book. And I thought, I don't know how to do that. I don't even know where to even start. So I put together an entire spiritual book writing committee. And I said, okay, you've got to help me develop these ideas and help show me how to begin to write. So I asked them to bring me someone that would help me to develop the ideas and to begin the process. That, I think it was just the next day, there's a message on my phone recorder from a complete stranger, and she said, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a developmental editor, and I was just wondering if you had any book projects you were working on." So when that happens, you know it's heaven sent. And then when it, once my book had gotten to a certain place where all we needed to do was to go through the manuscript and make sure that all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed, I again turned to my spiritual book writing committee. I said, now you have to bring me somebody to help with that. Well, I have a brand new client in my business the next day who had very tiny handwriting. So that means to me they're into detail. And I said, well, what is it that you do? And she says, well, I'm a copy editor. And I said, well, what's a copy editor do? And she says, well, we go through manuscripts and we make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. And so I said, okay, well, you're supposed to work for me. But one more final story. Then when it came time and the manuscript was done, the book was done, I got the message from my team. Now it's time to get it published with a major publishing house. Now this is not easy to do. I didn't know that, but they say that's not easy to do, to get a book published from a major publishing house. So they tell you to go to expensive seminars, learn how to write your book proposal, get your agent, get your press kit together, all this stuff that I had no knowledge of. I just got the message, yes, it's time to submit it. So I asked my committee, well, who's going to publish it? And they led me to the book, The Power of Now, and it's published by New World Library. And I said, okay, this looks like a good place that would publish my book. And so I sent my book to them, no press kit, no agent, no book proposal, nothing, just a little note that said, you guys are the ones. I never submitted to any other publisher, and they called and published the book. So that's how you can call upon this extraordinary power and bring it right down to earth to use in your everyday life. You simply imagine that these talents, abilities, skills, personality traits exist. Call upon them, hire them. So the wonderful thing is, when you're talking about the heavens, there's no money payment, so you can afford anything. And there's no time constriction. All the restrictions that we work with, they don't have. And they go to work in amazing ways for us and arrange these, what we would call coincidences or synchronicities. They go to work and arrange these for us, and in ways that are sometimes just flat-out miracles.
Yes, and the synchronicities that come about. What I love about it is that there are a lot of unemployed angels out there. A lot of people aren't even aware of these synchronicities coming from their guides. So think about this concerted, focused effort, concentrated effort to really put it out there to your team. I have similar stories as well with the producer that we hired recently. Just one person, and it was the right person. And so there's lots of great synchronicities coming when we really pay attention to it. So the book, Hiring the Heavens, this book came to me through synchronistic ways as well. And we look back and we can feel that these are angels working with us. How do you feel your angels? When you go into a board meeting with your angels, can you feel them, or you're just imagining them?
Oh, great question. Well, what I like to do is talk out loud, for one thing. Because I figure that, if anybody were to tune into this head, it would be hard to figure out what I'm serious about and what I'm not, and what I'm just like formulating ideas. So by talking out loud, then I'm able to become clear and concise about my thoughts and what it is that I'm requesting. And I talk to them like they're best friends. I don't put on airs. I don't get on my knees and pray. I don't do any of that. I just make them real. Make them real like they are best friends right beside me, assisting me every step of the way. And that's the beauty of it. Your angelic realm is as close as your next thought. And there's nothing that you have to do to prepare yourself to talk to them. You just say, you can wake up in the morning and say, good morning, angels. What are we going to do today? Tell me what's on the agenda. Or say, okay, here's what I'm thinking about. I've got this idea that I want to do such and such, and I'm just trying to formulate it. So maybe you can come in and help give me more ideas and help me solidify what it is that I want to do. You can be, just talk to them like you're talking to a best friend. And that, I think, is the most important thing. In religion, we're really taught to put the spiritual world away from us and at arm's length. And we have to make ourselves worthy, right? To like when I was taught to pray, it had to be on my knees, and it had to, all that stuff. And there had to be a certain amount of reverence. And I just threw all that out the window and just started talking to them as if they were sitting right beside me, and they were friends. And that made all the difference in the world. Then they became part of my everyday life. And what I think is they never wanted to be separate from us in the first place. They never wanted to be put somewhere out, on a cloud. They want to be part of our lives. They rejoice in being included in everything that we do. And that's another thing, is that I used to think that if I were going to talk to this heavenly realm, it had to be something that was a worthy request, right? I had to be able to justify why I would call upon that power. And it had to be something good. I could wait till I was in a time of crisis. I could pray for somebody that was sick, or some worthy idea, right? But just to ask for the perfect hair color, you wouldn't do that. But now I do. I hire a spiritual hairdresser, because there is a spiritual hairdresser that knows exactly what the perfect hair color for you is. And if you call upon that intelligence, then you'll be guided to that exact color that you need. And that's the wonderful thing. There is no question that is too small, no request that is too small or trivial. And there's nothing that's too big. And you don't have to worry about, is this an okay thing to ask? You don't even have to worry about that.
It's wonderful because you can literally start new projects and new endeavors with total trust that you're going to be taken care of if you build your celestial team.
Right.
The inspiration that comes through, the contacts that come through. And also, I've got a funny story. You had mentioned when we spoke on Healing Conversations before that there's a sleuth out there.
A jewelry sleuth.
A jewelry sleuth. Well, my son, who was in middle school, someone took his clothes out of his gym locker. And we said, okay, get your sleuth. And they did find his jeans a few days later in a ditch outside the school. But that's interesting because these little things, so we can use this angelic assistance to help us in little areas, in big areas, and just test it out a little bit, because you will find it works. And that just builds our confidence.
It does. And yeah, I would agree with that. Start with some fun little things, and then that will build your confidence to ask for the bigger things. But that jewelry sleuth, there is a spiritual jewelry sleuth that has found jewelry that sometimes has been missing for months and months. I had a lady that had called, or she had emailed me, and she said, I read your book and that fantastic story in your book about the jewelry sleuth and this irregular shaped pearl that was brought back to the person asking, without that story, it's worth the read just to hear that. But anyway, she said she was missing a diamond ring. And there was a place in her jewelry drawer that she always put it. And it was gone, and she hadn't been able to find it for months. She said, do you think that it would be something that the spiritual jewelry sleuth could help me with? And I said, of course, call upon her. Well, she wrote back to me just a week later and said, well, I did ask the spiritual jewelry sleuth to find it for me, and it hasn't shown up yet. And she said, what am I doing wrong? And that's the thing about this, is that you can't get this wrong. There's no one right way of doing it, and you can't get it wrong. No, relax, relax. But that's the first place people go to when it seems like something isn't happening. They say, what am I doing wrong? And that, we'll talk about that, because that gets into this whole worthiness issue, and that's such a big topic, so we must talk about that. So when she asked me, what am I doing wrong? I said, you're not doing anything wrong, just continue to ask. And she says, well, do I ask just once, or do I ask every day? I mean, how do I do this? And I said, again, there's no one right way of doing this, and you can't get it wrong. So however it works for you, whatever feels comfortable to you. If you want to ask just once, great, that's fine. If you want to ask every single morning, it doesn't matter. She said, well, I think I'll ask every day, and I'll look in my drawer to see if the ring has been, that's what I'm asking for, is that the ring be put back. So she looked, and a month went by, 2 months went by, and she says, well, Jean, I'm about giving up hope, because I look in my drawer every day and I don't see this diamond ring. And I'm thinking that I must be doing something wrong again. We can't help but go there. And I said, just have faith, keep asking. So she did. And then I received the most fantastic email. I wish I had it with me, but it was titled, I found it, with big all kinds of exclamation points. She said she opened her drawer just when she was like at the final breaking point of giving up all hope. And isn't it interesting? I have no idea. Maybe it was to be a lesson for her. I don't know. But just when she was at that point of giving up all hope, she opened her drawer, and there it was, sitting in the exact spot where she had asked for it to be replaced. There was her ring.
Wow. And so the important thing to do is show gratitude then. Can you talk more on how we then thank our angels and recognize these synchronicities that they bring forth?
The gratitude now, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm going to present something here that may be a little different than what most people hear today. And that is that I'm sure you're familiar with the law of attraction. And I totally love the law of attraction. And at first I thought that's how this book was working, and that's how this concept was working, was through the law of attraction. And in the law of attraction, they talk about having an attitude of gratitude, which is fabulous. But here's what I came to discover of why this is so different and unique, is that it doesn't work by the law of attraction. And the main difference is that you can't earn this. This is a gift that's given to you by grace, and it's yours simply because you're alive. You don't have to earn that next breath that you're breathing, right? It's yours because you exist, because you're alive. And this goes into that worthiness issue. Well, when you're being given a gift, and the whole idea of a gift is you better use it. Just use it. It's nothing you have to try to work ahead of time and to make it happen. And the law of attraction works from that premise. So from law of attraction, you have to be vigilant about what your attitude is. What is it? What's the energy that I'm putting out? And all of this is true for the law of attraction. You have to pay attention to your energy that you're putting out, because what you put out, you get back. Are you in an attitude of gratitude? Are you stating things in the present tense? Do you have enough emotion with what it is that you're asking? All those things. And so when we are working with the law of attraction for manifesting, it sometimes can be where we become hypervigilant, because when it's not working, where do we go? It's my fault. I'm doing something wrong. I must not have the right attitude. I must not have worked through my mother issues. I must not have worked through my father issues. I must have some karma I have to deal with. I must have some subconscious problems here. I must not have enough attitude of gratitude. There's always something that we've got to take a look at and see, what do I need to shift and change in me to make the law of attraction work? Well, what I came to find out is that hiring the heavens works from the law of grace. The law of grace says, this is a gift to you because of who you are. And we'll get into that a little bit, and that was one of the most astounding epiphanies I got from writing this book, is the discovery of who we really are. But when you get in touch with that and know who you truly are, this is a gift that is being given to you by grace, and there's nothing you can do to earn it, and nothing you can do to have it taken away from you. It's simply yours, period. That's a really hard concept for us to wrap our heads around, because we're so used to earning everything. So when it comes to gratitude, here's what I can tell you, is by working from the law of grace and working with hiring the heavens, when you see these amazing synchronicities occur, you can't help but be in gratitude. It's a symptom. It's a symptom of working from the law of grace. It happens naturally. It is nothing you have to conjure up ahead of time. It's simply a byproduct, if you will.
Wow, the law of grace. And it really reminds us that if we can just believe more, put more belief into what we want rather than what we worry about. We tend to just put so much trust in our worries and doubts. But what you're saying is we need to trust in the law of grace that's there for us. And what about asking? So that's part of this as well.
Yes. I always say you're only one step away from a deep connection with your angels, and that is the step, is asking. And it doesn't matter if it's asking for something or asking a question. It's merely asking. When you ask, you're opening that doorway to that higher dimension. And that's all you need to do, is to simply ask and then be open to receiving what the answer is. And believe me, once I found out that I could have a conversation with my angels, I spent 2 to 3 years in conversation with them, asking all sorts of questions. I'm very curious. I wanted to know, who are we? And how did we get here? What's life about? How is it that we can create? What's our purpose? What's the whole meaning of life? I mean, I wanted to ask all the mystical questions that have been around for eons of time. Who hasn't wondered? Who am I? And why? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? Who hasn't asked that question? And those are questions of the mystics. How does life occur? Well, I asked those questions of my angels and received answers. And out of that, I actually created a website called Creative Mystic, because I thought, I'm asking all the same questions that the mystics have. So I'm going to do it creatively. I'm going to talk to my angel team and ask them questions and hear what they have to say. And what I found out was astounding. And what I found out is that we are God. And this is something that in New Age circles, they talk about this, but rarely do we live from that place. And we are God, and God is experiencing through us, and we are contributing to the evolution of consciousness through God experiencing through us. One of my clients said that his daughter, who was, I think she was only 10 years old, she came downstairs one morning and announced to her father, "Dad, I have decided I don't have a soul." And he said, "Wow, well, I'm curious where this is going. Tell me, you don't have a soul." And she says, "No, I don't have a soul. I am a soul, and I have a body." Okay. And that's the perspective that we need to have. We are these divine beings, and we are carrying God with us, and God is experiencing through us. And we get to have a body through which we experience. But if that's who we are then, Loren, does it make sense that all of the heavenly realms is there to support us in our creation. If we are God and God is experiencing through us, does it make sense that we have access to that realm? It does, doesn't it? And does it make sense that we don't have to earn it? That it's simply ours because of who we are?
Because of who we are, we just need to connect to it.
Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. And so when we are building this connection with our angels, what do we need to do every day to nurture it? Is there a process that you do?
Yes, and again, I'm going to be very careful about my wording here. There's nothing you need to do. But if you want to create that relationship, it's like a muscle. It's like anything else that takes time to work that muscle to where it gets really strong. To have that deep connection, it is something to remind yourself every day of who you really are. Meditation is a great way to do that. Myself, it was simply talking to my angel committees. I would start out my day talking to my angel committees, and throughout the day, it wouldn't matter if I had some big projects I was working on, then I would talk to my project manager for that project. Or if I was going shopping for a gift, on the fly, in the car, I would hire and talk to a spiritual gift angel to help assist me. The more that you ask, the more that you create that conversation, the more that door that begins to open and get wider and wider and wider to the point where it is just, to me, always full on. When I first started with this, I actually did meditate in the morning for sometimes 20 minutes to 30 minutes till I felt what I call a hookup. And that moment when I feel, okay, I feel connected to spirit. And some people say they get goosebumps. Some people, it feels like a feather just went down their back, or they can hear a voice. Everybody connects in different ways. But that's what I did in the beginning, is I would meditate until I reached that moment. And at first, it would take about 30 minutes. But as time went on and that muscle grew stronger and stronger, it got to the point where it would almost be instantaneous. And I would say then within a short time after that, it just feels like it's always on. I never feel like I have to do anything now to talk to my angels. They're just there.
Connected.
Yes.
I like that analogy of flexing a muscle. It's like every time you lift a weight, it gets stronger and stronger.
No request that is too small or silly or whatever, you don't have to ever worry about that. No request that the angels are going to say, oh, please, and there's no request that's too big. But I'll tell you a funny story of a friend that told me that she did hire a personal trainer, and she says, okay, the only time I can think of to exercise is like 5 o'clock in the morning. So I want you to get me out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning so I go exercise.
The hardest part.
Yeah. Well, then next morning, she literally felt herself like being pushed out of bed.
Wow.
And pushed to go get her tennis shoes on. She's going, okay, I'll get my shoes on. And she went out and she did her running, and she did 3 days of that and then fired them because she said, enough of that. And that's another thing. You don't have to worry about offending them. If you hire them to do something for you, like a personal trainer, and then you change your mind afterwards, that's okay. You don't have to worry about offending them. They just love being included in your life, and they're just like with you. Well, that didn't work. Okay, let's go back to the drawing board and let's find another way to do it.
Wonderful. So everyone, put your celestial teams together and experience this. It's amazing when we start asking and connecting in more. The veils are thinned these days, and this shift in consciousness that's going on, maybe you could speak a little bit about the great human that's going to come about from this. And the work that you do is really that bridge and a pathway for people to shift in consciousness. What do you see our world like as we connect more and more to these higher realms?
I do feel that we are, well, again, when I did my questions, when I asked my questions to my angels and asked those mystic questions, who are we, how did we get here? I did ask about that, and one of the most interesting things came about, and it said that not only, it's like a two-way street, not only were we created from God, and I'll use the word God, but we are creating God in turn. This is a two-way street here. So as we evolve, since God is experiencing through us, and it's not just in humans, it's in all realms, right? God is experiencing in all these different dimensions, in all these different realms, and everything is contributing to the whole. And as we change and evolve, God changes and evolves. And so, as we are evolving and becoming more and more connected to who we truly are, we are shifting the old paradigms. And I believe one of the things that is going away, and it might take 1,000 years from now, and 1,000 years in the context is hardly a second on the clock. But what we are evolving to is past this place where we have to show worthiness, and we have to come from a place of earning our grace. And it's interesting that even in the Bible, that was one of the things that that is talked about, that is that Christ came to give us that salvation, and that it was no longer by works, but by grace. I don't know if you know anything about verses in the Bible, but that's one of the verses, that we are now saved by grace, not by works. And that was 2,000 years ago. And here we are still kind of stuck in that, where we have to do it by works. We have to prove ourselves and justify ourselves and prove our worthiness. And one of the things that I believe that we are evolving past is where we are no longer having to prove our worthiness. And that will shift a great deal in humanity.
Mm-hmm. It's getting easier, really, to be here during this time. There could be challenges that people have out there. And what would you say to that? When people have challenges in this time, yes, they could connect more with their angels. That's the other opportunity. But isn't that challenge something that they need to look at in their life and choose whether or not they're going to take the easy road, or the road of grace, let's say, mm-hmm. the law of grace, or continue to let that be a challenge? What would you recommend for people facing challenges like that?
Yeah, and I was very curious about that. So when I asked that question of my angel committee, they said, well, look for the Trinities. And I said, what? Look for the Trinities? What does that mean?
That just gave me goosebumps.
And they said that when it comes to manifesting on this earth plane, that it is done by never, ever less than 3 laws in effect. And that there are possibly hundreds, I don't know, thousands of laws, but never less than 3. So I said, okay, well, what are the 3 laws of manifesting? They said there is the law of consequence, there is the law of attraction, and there is the law of grace. And the way that I came to think about it is almost like a movie metaphor. Lights, camera, action. Lights, camera, action. And that gives you the 3 laws. Now, let's talk about the action part. That's the law of consequence. Now, that is what we deal with and we're most familiar with here on this earth plane. That is, for every action, there's a consequence. You're learning to walk as a toddler, and you're stumbling around, and you bump into the coffee table, and you fall down. Law of consequence. I hit this, I fall down. You touch a hot burner, law of consequence. You get burned. Or, this goes on throughout. That's how we learn to navigate in a physical body, is through the law of consequences. And guess what? It never ends. There is no time in your life that the law of consequences goes out the door. It always exists, right? You never get away from that. You do good in school, you get good grades. I mean, we can go on and on with examples. The law of consequence is always in effect. But so is the law of attraction. And this operates from a very different place. The law of attraction is about that camera view. What are you focused on? What is the camera looking at? What's your perspective? What's the meaning you're giving to things? What's your outlook on life? So the idea of if you're expecting to see wonderful things happen, if you're expecting to see that everybody's going to like me when I go into this meeting room, then law of attraction says, well, yes, that's where your camera is pointed, so of course that's what's going to happen. So law of attraction works from that point of view. And we get familiar with that by simple things like you have a good attitude, for the most part, you get that back. So we start to become familiar with that. But what we don't have a lot of practice with is the law of grace. And even as I'm saying that, my angels are going, wait a minute, that's not true. You have lots of practice with the law of grace. Okay, I'll tell you how you have lots of practice with it. Every time you make a decision, you're in the law of grace. Law of grace is where we come from this realm of infinite possibilities, and we make a choice. So even if the decision is, I'm going to get out of bed this morning, and this morning I'm going to eat breakfast. Anytime you make a decision, you are coming from the law of grace. What gives you the right and the capacity to make a decision? That's a gift. The ability to just decide to do something, that comes from grace. And so, thank you, angels, for reminding me. Yes, we have lots of experience from the law of grace, simply because we make decisions every single day.
So when we look out, you mentioned earlier the old paradigms are falling away. So when we look around our world and our planet and we see things that we do not like, don't give the energy, what you're saying is don't give the energy to what you don't like. Somehow shift it into what we do want. And the angels are there to help us with that.
Right.
So radiation in our waters, fracking, these sort of issues, the key is not to let that get us down or depressed, but to somehow play with the angels, ask the angels for some direction on that.
Yeah. Yes, I would invoke all three laws. So I would call upon grace and ask the angels to assist in whatever it is that you're looking at or concerned about, whether it's radiation or whatever hot subject there is out there, and ask for that assistance in making a miracle happen, and asking for guidance on how to work with that. Then use the law of attraction to shift your focus to what it is that's right about it, and something that you can look to gain support or find people that are of like mind. And then use the law of consequences to say, well, okay, maybe my home is just it's located in the wrong place, and it's in the, I'm just asking for trouble by staying here. Maybe it's time to move. I mean, it's not just one, and that's what they said to me. Look for the Trinity. You have to work with, and that's the key to manifesting, you have to work with all three laws. And when all three are in sync, miracles do happen, tremendous shifts. For example, if you wanted to go on a diet and lose weight, well, we all know that you can do that. That's law of consequences. You eat less calories, you lose weight, of course. All right, law of consequences. But if you don't work with the other two laws, what happens? You just gain it right back, which is what usually occurs.
How would you work with the other two laws in that instance?
Okay, so what if you worked with the law of consequence? You've decided on a diet plan that you wanted to go with, and yes, say it involves eating less calories or whatever you decide works for you. So you're doing law of consequences. Now you invoke the law of attraction, and you shift your camera. You start looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I am seeing evidence that I'm losing weight and I'm looking good. This is nice. And people are starting to respond to me differently. I'm really seeing that I'm having a different attitude towards food, and I'm recognizing that I feel better about myself, and I'm recognizing that. I'm so grateful. Bring in that law of, the attitude of gratitude. Work with that law of attraction. And then go to grace. And the first thing that I would do is hire your spiritual diet committee and ask this diet committee to help shift the image, the self-image in your mind of what it's like, I said lights, camera, action. Well, when you have lights going through a projector and projecting onto the movie screen, it's projecting through that film strip. Does it work to change what's on the movie screen? No, you can't. You have to go behind the projector and work with the lights and shift what is on that film strip. So then I would ask from Law of Grace, then we bring in that decision. I'm deciding to change what my body image looks like. Here's how I see it. Project that onto the screen. And so that's how you would bring all three into practice. And when they're all three in sync, then you become that.
When miracles happen.
Yes.
Wow. That's powerful. And it's a really great tool for these times as we navigate our way through this shift in consciousness. And really, all of your work, your website, your great teachings, we're going to get to that in a moment, it comes from your connection, your inspiration with these higher realms, with the angels that you employ.
It does indeed. And as a matter of fact, I would ask my angel team when I was learning, when I was going through this time of journaling with my angels and my higher guidance, I said, okay, I need to understand more about this. Can you tell me a book to read? And they would always tell me no.
Oh.
They'd say, no, we don't want you to read a book.
You hear it loud and clear.
Yeah, they would say, we want you to understand it first. And once you get it to a certain level of sufficiency, then we'll tell you about a book that will confirm it. But you don't get to do that ahead of time.
Because after all, truth is what you experience personally.
Yes, it is.
Otherwise, it would just be a philosophy.
Yes.
So wonderful. So you've got a beautiful package for us, a special offer. This is a training package for people to add into their lives. Can you share with us? There's 3 different products that you have, 3 different lessons.
Right. So I put together, it's part of a video series that I did. So there are over almost 30 hours of video taping that I did for these products, and it's a self-study course, so you can do it in your own time, but they are broken into 20-minute segments. Perfect. So that it's nice and easy to go back to for review. The first module is called Hiring the Heavens in Depth, and here we go into complete depth about hiring the heavens, not only about how it works, how I came about this whole process, many fabulous stories that'll just knock your socks off. Stories that you're going...
Total confirmation.
Yeah, that you're going, what? In ways that you absolutely know. There's no question there has been assistance from the heavens. And so I love to tell all those stories, and that's in this program. And I go into the 3 laws of manifesting and the trinities, and not only that trinity, but all the other trinities that are out there. And that was quite an interesting process. Is once they said, look for the trinities, they started telling me all the different trinities that there are, and I'm going, oh my God.
And noting your necklace, it's a trinity.
It is.
Yeah.
It's everywhere out there.
Uh-huh.
And once I started paying attention to that, it gave me a whole new understanding about how it is that we manifest here on this planet. And so I go into depth about that. So that is in Hiring the Heavens in Depth. The second module is called TQ Advantage. Now, this is something, again, that my angels gave to me. They said, I asked them, I said, you know, whenever I do these talks, I have to cover my bases. Some people are offended by the word God and don't use God. They use source or universe or, you know, there's a number of other terms. And some people are offended by the word angels and they prefer spirit guides or beings of light. And then there's, what's the words for intuition? Sometimes intuition feels that it's a little bit out of their reach and they can't do it. So what can I use besides intuition, sixth sense, and the list goes on and on. In fact, I sat down and wrote down all of the different terms that we have to describe this something else beyond our intellect. It's as if we all know there's something else, but what word is all-encompassing and neutral enough to describe that something else? So I asked my guidance this, what word do I want to use? And they said transcendental intelligence. Don't you just love it? Mm-hmm. So that's your TQ. We have our IQ, and then your emotional, your EQ, and now your TQ, your transcendental intelligence. And this is, how can we tap into this, something beyond the intellect, and get out of our head, and into this realm where we actually have access to the knowledge of the universes. And so in TQ Advantage, I teach how to use a pendulum with dowsing. Are you familiar at all with pendulum dowsing?
Yes, and it's perfect because you're really tapping into the supermind,
You are.
consciousness.
Super consciousness, those were other terms for it. So I teach how to douse with a pendulum. I teach ways that if you don't want to do that, how can you douse with just using your body. Uh-huh. I teach how to read tarot cards and receive words. That's how I received a lot of my information. If I wasn't hearing it, I'd say, well, can you give me a clue? And they would guide me to a tarot deck, and I'd pull a card, and there would be the words, almost like verbatim, in answer to my question of what I needed to know. And so I teach people how to create that conversation with higher guidance and to journal. So I filled out, binders after binders of my journaling, my questions and my responses that I would get back from my angels and in answer to this whole thing we call life. So that's the second module. And then the third module is called the Creative Mystic Spiritual Studies, and that is, in effect, all of my journaling. Those 2 to 3 years of journaling, you get to see the answers that came from my guidance about who are we, how do we get here, what's this life about, how do I find my purpose, who am I, how do I find out my gifts of spirit. I have a whole section where you get to discover more about your light and what it is you're here to do. So you get to find out what's on your soul's resume. And that's a lot of fun. And that also changed my life. And I came to find out that what I am here to do is to be a spiritual teacher. Now, again, if you had told me that 20 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. That wasn't even on the radar. Wasn't even on the list. So by going through this process, I came to understand what's on my soul's resume and what it is that I am really here to do. And then a fabulous process about the art of proclaiming. Because once you discover what you're here to do, then it's about how you proclaim that to the world. And the power that comes from that once you proclaim that, it's like the entire angelic realm rallies to support you, and there's nothing that's going to stop it. Nothing that's going to stop it.
Incredible. Really good, because you're really helping awaken a lot of people on the planet. We have 7 billion people to communicate this to and get this out there to. And one heart at a time, we are the shift that's happening. Thank you so much. Can you share anything for the audience today as we say goodbye that we might not have touched upon? Maybe one of your fascinating stories, or what you think is perhaps the most important work for us to do.
Well, I can tell you that, as you mentioned, there are thousands and thousands of unemployed angels. And the way that you honor a gift of this magnitude, there's only one thing you have to do to honor it. You honor it by using it. Mm-hmm. That's how you honor it. If you say, well, thank you so much, universe, for this fantastic, extraordinary gift, and now I'm going to put it up on the shelf and never use it, that's not honoring it. So my suggestion is to use it. And don't wait a second. Don't even think to yourself, well, I gotta figure out how to do this, and I've got to think of a really good project. Forget that. Just start with the first thing that comes to mind. There's nothing you have to do to earn it. And I love to end with the story that was told to me by someone who called me up, and she said, Jean, I have to tell you that I am clairvoyant, and I have worked with the angels since I was very young. I have always seen them. But I had only used them for big ticket items, like you talk about in your book. I just thought I'd work with the archangels and work with the big ticket items. I never thought I could get help for all the little things in my life. So after reading your book, I sat down and wrote out committee page after committee page, and I hired away from the heavens. So I had a committee for my health. I had a committee for my work. I had a committee for my husband, a romance committee. I had a committee for my children. I had a committee for every aspect of my life, and exhausted, I fell asleep. Well, the next morning, when I woke up, because I'm clairvoyant, I opened my eyes, and they were everywhere. I could not even believe it. There were so many angels milling about. It was just astounding. There was so much commotion, and there were even some that I hadn't hired saying, we heard you were hiring. Have you got a job for us? And they were showing her a resume of what they were good at. So I've never forgotten that. There are thousands and thousands of unemployed angels. They are just waiting for you to call upon them. Don't wait a second. As soon as you hear this, begin hiring from the heavens. Put this to work in every aspect of your life. You will open a door to this unbelievable, tremendous resource pool and power and knowledge and wisdom, and it will change your life.
Very inspiring. I know everyone listening is ready to put their team together. In fact, right now, I'm calling on an angel to assist my son walking up from the bottom of the hill on his journey here to the studio.
Good.
So that's a good one. Everyone, thank you, and put your team together. If it resonates with you, share this with everyone that you know. Put these practices into work in your life, and join Jean in her online course. It's amazing work. And we thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.